Who was the guy who pitched the no-hitter?
Game. Or no-hitter.
That was sick. First time this season.
Some random guy who I was getting.
Who was it even for? Was it a White Sox pitch?
Yeah, the White Sox. Well, actually, A-Rod was on Part of My Take on Sunday, and he talked about how he got no hit with the Mariners, and he said it was the worst thing in the world. He was like, it's like around the fifth inning, they're like, we got to get a hit. We really got to do something here.
His appearance on that pod was actually pretty good. I was like, I don't like A-Rod, but actually hearing him speak candidly, I'm like, okay.
It's kind of fun. I was like, I'm into this.
Same.
I'm all back on the A-Rod train, even though he screwed the Mariners and said, I want to go play for another team that will pay me the largest contract in MLB history.
Asshole.
And then he's like, peace out, Seattle. And then, but he did talk about Seattle in good grace yesterday. He talked about his relationship with Lou, and then Jay Buhner but yeah, he said that so you listened to it when he said that he got that hit, or he should have gotten that hit, and the guy made a really impressive play. He was like, I thought it was gonna be a triple. Yeah. And he was like, oh, we'll be just fine. Like, we're gonna hit the ball hard, and then they got no hit.
Yep.
But I guess the pitcher's dad died like that previous week, and it's like, well,
should have known he was going to throw a no-hitter.
Yeah, they should have been prepped for that. They should have been like, all right, we shouldn't even try.
You could tell that.
We should
telegraph that easily.
Try.
All right, we're going in 5, boys.
Yes, sir.
I did get a little
5,
bit better of an impression
4,
of him.
3.
Yeah, no, me too. That was the
2,
first time that I've ever.
I don't hate A-Rod. Hello and welcome back to the Locker Room. I am your host Justin Reed alongside Andrew Tenney, and we are here to talk some sports with you guys. A lot of news going on right now. Sports are really starting to kick it back into gear.
Sports are back
pretty
in a
much.
big bad way.
There's not really any issues going on right now, and so aside from no coronavirus issues happening right now. So we will start off with kind of an interesting controversy that happened. I think it was over the weekend is when this happened. Some NHL stuff. I think this is our first NHL talk.
NHL talk, yeah. Other than the Kraken.
But this is
that was a given.
Yeah, that's local. So this one's a little bit more national. So NHL has multiple bubbles. I think they have 3 bubbles, maybe 4, but it's all in Canada, which is interesting. And NBC Sports is is the largest group that covers NHL. And Mike Milbury, who's a commentator on NBC Sports, is a former Boston Bruin of 12 years, and they were just discussing the bubbles. And a fellow analyst talked about how it's the perfect environment for all these players. If you enjoy playing and enjoy being with your teammates for long periods of time, it's a perfect place. And I would like that, hanging out with all your guy friends, playing hockey, it's just the perfect guys being dudes moment. Milbury hops on the mic and he says, not even any women here to disrupt your concentration. To me, I didn't think that was anything, but he ended up having to he apologized. NHL came out and said an apology. NBC Sports came out and said an apology. Milbury apologized, and then Milbury said, I'm going to take a step back from commentating. And that was that.
That's a comment where if you hear it live, I don't even think it garners like a second to stop and think about what was just said and consider, wait, was that perhaps controversial or misogynistic in any way?
Yeah.
That does not make you stop and pause and reflect about what was said. That, I don't know.
It really goes down to this whole cancel culture thing where, a guy says something that most people would just literally gloss over and wouldn't even think about. But heck, even when I look at that and I really dive into it, it really is just a guy who, it's a fact. It's a pure fact. You look at guys, at parents who have a wife and kids, having your family there, having women there, that's a distraction however you want to play it, especially in this current time. And
in none of those ways in which it could be a distraction is it degrading or speaking negatively or demeaning to women. And if you can construe that sort of idea from that statement, then that's on you. I don't know what you can say about him.
Now, if you would have said, not even any sexy women here to hook up with.
There we go. Yeah, that's different.
Okay, Mike, let's be careful here.
Right.
So I saw that, and I'm just like
just ask Seahawks former undrafted rookie free agent.
Kamas Siverand or something like that, sneaking in the woman who was disguised as a man.
And it was a topic on First Take. Stephen A. brought it up multiple times when the players were going down into the bubble, and he was talking about, these lifestyles that these players are accustomed to living and what comes with that in terms of, their association with women and everything.
Yep.
And it's very practical, a real thing that is a part of their lives and a part of their status and everything. Yep. It's like being a pro athlete. Yeah, that's what happens.
Women like to be around you, and
they
literally
gravitate
just the way
towards
it
you.
is. And I mean, you look at all of these models and all of these, and you even look at the NBA players specifically. They slide into DMs of models all the time, and then they get put on blast for it all the time. And you're telling me that's not a distraction? I mean, that's literally just a fact. And he got roasted on it as if he's a sexist, like you said, misogynistic guy. And it's like,
very proactive move by him taking himself out.
He probably was like, screw this. I don't want to be a part of something where I can't even say a simple fact, and then the entire country comes at me like I said something so sexist.
Right, because if this is the bar that we're setting for any media members, sports or otherwise, then we might as well just replace humans with robots so that the robots can be meticulous and calculated and not actually, venture into some of these dangerous areas, if you even want to call them that, which it just shouldn't be. I don't know. I'm hoping and praying that the pendulum swings back on this type of culture, because it's really it's problematic. It is toxic. They say that his comments might be toxic. Are they really? If you can show me like a direct line between toxicity and what he said, sure.
I'm all ears.
I would love to see you make the argument, but
that'd be a bold strategy for that person.
Truly.
To connect. So speaking of NBA and their love for Instagram models, let's move on to the NBA portion of our discussion.
All right, how many guys has Kendall Jenner been with? Okay, Kuzma was there at one point.
Yep.
I think the latest has been Devin Booker rather. Ben Simmons was around there at some point. Okay, 3. Yeah,
that's 3. But if we open up to the Kardashians now we have
Chris Humphries.
Now we have probably a nice baker's dozen. I think.
Yeah, I think so too. But anyway, just to give you an idea of
the
pro athletes'
love for NBA players.
Right.
We are your go-to stop for that.
In Spokane,
for sure. So we've had all sorts of NBA news going on, specifically on the court, in terms with a couple injuries, in terms of a couple players making big comebacks. What are some of the headlines so far coming out of Orlando?
Well, so since we last talked, the Clippers and the Mavs series got exponentially more interesting. I think it was Sunday night.
Luka put the Mavs on his back for a
43, 17, and 13, including a step-back three-pointer as time expired, right in Reggie Jackson's face. Not a good time to be Reggie Jackson. With one ankle, can you imagine? Yeah, with good. Yeah, can you even imagine? So that kind of gave a new life to the series, and it's like, oh my God, the Mavericks are back in this thing 2-2 without Porzingis. Holy crap! Like we are seeing. Right. We are seeing the legend of Luka materialize right in front of our faces.
He's only 21.
Right. It's like
this guy just became a legal alcoholic in the United States.
He is the future, but he's also the present. It's crazy that he already has like this almost like icon legendary status around him, and it's just incredible.
But he still feels underrated. He still
in a way,
feels like he's not. When you talk about the great NBA players of today, Giannis, LeBron are the first two names out of your mouth, and I think you can make an argument there. But I don't know if Luka comes out of people's mouth until like 6. I think the top 5, and I'm not saying like diehard NBA analysts, but I'm talking about just casual fans who are like, oh yeah, I watch the NBA. Like I don't think Luka's name comes out of anybody's mouth until 6.
I think that's going to be changing as we enter the next season, whenever that might happen. But and we'll see what he does in the rest of the series. However, since that awesome, iconic game of the playoffs, moment of the playoffs happened on Sunday. Last night, the Clippers came back and beat them by a 40-plus. So, 154-11, I think.
Yeah,
Paul George decided to show up. He had been MIA.
Physically and mentally.
Yeah. So, when he was playing badly over the last 3-game stretch, he came out in his post-game interviews with the classic ice on the shoulders. He's got injury history with both of his shoulders, but he's totally LeBroning it for the theatrics and the drama, and just to be like, hey, actually, the reason that I'm playing poorly can only be attributed to the fact that I'm hurt. I can't possibly be responsible for just not being mentally there or just shooting the ball badly.
And it's even better now after what has come out last night after the game. And it's like, okay, now we know it's not the ice bag. Like, you kind of put yourself in a corner here because you were talking about how bad your shoulder hurt, but in actuality, that wasn't the issue at all.
So he said that he was in a dark place and that the bubble had gotten to him. And so I want to stop right there because I want to be delicate about tiptoeing around the issue of mental health and being in a dark place, because I could see for a lot of guys being in that bubble for as long as they already have been now, and being away from the people that they love, typically would associate with, I could see how that could get to some people. However, he also went on to say that he was mentally checked out. And so if we're looking at that just from an on-court basketball perspective, all right, dude, you are the number 2 guy. You are supposed to be the 1B to Kawhi's 1A on a title contending team. You are in LA. You are in the first round of the playoffs in a series that should not really be close, yet it is. You guys are massively favored. And you're admitting, while still in the middle of the series is not over, the playoffs aren't even over, and you're admitting that you are mentally checked out. Yeah. So that is not great, and I think that proves a lot of people's reservations about who Paul George is as a player. And he coined himself playoff P, or I don't know if Russell Westbrook did it. I thought he self-ordained himself last year in one of the Oklahoma City series early round, and you're just not. Not like
you can't be when you mentally check out of essentially a whole series. I mean, this was his first game. Was that game 5?
It was game 5 last night. Yeah.
I mean, you spent 4 games being mentally checked out, and you call yourself whoever came up with that nickname probably should back out of the nickname business.
I think it's him, and he's got to retire himself. He's got to cancel himself.
Exactly.
Just make a comment about women. So that was an interesting development that just happened. We'll see how that series ends up. The Mavericks, you can only imagine how physically and emotionally spent they were after that insane game 4. And they just weren't there.
And they just don't have. I mean, healthy. I think there's an argument that they could at least battle because Luka is playing out of his mind, but he has a bad ankle. Porzingis has been out, and I don't know if he'll come back.
Also, additional little controversy: Marcus Morris stepped on Luka's bad ankle, and there has been speculation about whether that was intentional or not.
He's getting ripped apart on Twitter. I didn't realize that he was considered a dirty player, but I've seen a lot of players.
He took the ball when he was with the Celtics and just threw it off of Justin Anderson's head, which when I was a Celtics fan,
I was like, he was just trying to play with him. Like it was. I mean, come on, that's just a common
easy mistake. Yeah, fair enough. But adding a little more fuel to the fire of this series that is already pretty emotionally charged.
Yeah, it's definitely on edge.
No, it's great. I hope that the Mavs can come back and even the series up. I'm not expecting them to. I think that they've already done more than what was fair to expect from them against this Clippers team who has all these different aspirations and has so much depth, so much talent depth, and just long-bodied guys to throw at Luka with PG and Kawhi. But anyway, that's kind of what's going on in that series. Denver and Utah has also gotten very interesting, and Denver was on the brink of elimination. They were down 3-1, and their defense has just been absolutely horrendous. They can't guard anybody. MPJ has shown up, and we've talked about how he's kind of come onto the scene, and it's like you see the talent of him as a scorer. But the reason that he was fighting to even be in the rotation and get minutes is because he is just lost on defense, and that continues to be the case. And Jokic has relapsed into pre-2019-2020 season defensive Jokic, which means he's not bodying anybody up.
He's like that.
We're
Go
good.
ahead. Here's the lane.
I mean, Utah is just scoring at will, but they did come back last night after being down double digits for a large portion of the game, and they came back. And Jamal Murray decided to have 2 consecutive games in which he was clearly the number 1 option for Denver. Yeah. He had a sweet double spin, finesse finish at the rim.
Right on Gobert.
Hats off to Jamal Murray. I assume now that he's had 2 consecutive good games, he's probably going to go for 14 tomorrow night.
Chances are.
But still, hats off to him in the moment.
He's the first player in, I don't want to say history. I want to say, I think since 1970, to have 2 playoff games with 40-plus points and no turnovers. He hasn't turned the ball over in 2 games.
It's insane.
And he's a guy who really hasn't come on until – I mean, this year he's had definitely a better season. But, I mean, he played 1 year at Kentucky, and he came out of the draft, and he just hasn't done much. Then all of a sudden, like, he's kind of taking control. And this is one of those times where he could really become one of the top guards in the country if he continues to play like he has in the playoffs. And he has the athletic ability. He has the shooting ability. I don't know what was holding him back. It was a confidence thing. It was kind of a poor Nuggets team there for a while. But that's exciting to see, I'm sure, for the Nuggets fans and for him as well.
Yeah, definitely. Just moving on quickly, just because I don't think at this point in the series there's much to talk about, but Portland's done. It was fun while it lasted for, one game. It was fun to talk about the demise of the Lakers and all the problems and everything, but those have been put to bed.
Now, I do think, though, that Portland, if they had a better answer to LeBron and more depth, I think they really
their
could have
wings.
competed.
Yeah, their wings. They have nobody to.
They lost.
They have nobody to stop him.
And they lost
Mo Harkless, who nobody really talks about, but I think also Aminu was another one of their long-bodied wings that they could use to defend on the perimeter, which they just don't have anymore.
The lefty who hasn't been playing. He was a really good knockdown shooter.
That guy.
I can't remember what his name is. Anyway, Portland has also been decimated with injuries. Collins was ruled out there after game
really
1.
Great story going on
awesome
during the
story.
bubble. Hats off to Portland for showing up and just basically play. They didn't play a game that was not a playoff game since they entered the bubble.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
I think
just
they should be
a matter
really
of fact.
good next year. If they're going to get all these guys back, you're going to have Dame healthy. You're going to have hopefully a healthy Zach Collins. You're going to have a Portland team that's going to want to prove that the last portion of this season wasn't a fluke.
I wonder if they're one of those teams, and by all accounts, Terry Stotts is one of the most respected coaches in the league, and I do think he's a really good coach. I wonder if they're one of those teams that just needs a new face, not because Terry Stotts isn't maximizing them or getting the most out of them, just like a change of scenery. When it's just time to move on, you need like a breath of fresh air, Mark Jackson, Steve Kerr, those kind of situations. That's kind of one thing that I wonder about them going forward. And then kind of the last series to just touch on that's still interesting. There's the Magic and the Bucks, but the fact that that's still going on is surprising. But it's only 3-1. They'll probably finish off the Magic tonight. But Oklahoma City has come back from down 2 games to 0, and they have tied up the series, and we're going to get at least 6 games. And that has gotten very interesting because
very fast.
Dort has absolutely just been stifling James Harden, and James has been getting his numbers and everything, but he's also having to take like 25 shots to get 25 points. And Russell Westbrook isn't out there, so really James is the only guy creating off the ball, off the dribble for everybody else getting involved. And we've seen it in previous playoff series in his past where if he is the only guy doing it, he gets worn down. And so you just wonder the way that Oklahoma City has been able to defend them in the past 2 games, if he's just going to continue to wear down and if he's going to be able to bounce back. And who knows about Russell and his quad. I mean, that's anytime you're dealing with a muscle thing, that's hard to come back on. I mean, it's just going to take however much time it takes to get back. It's not like you can ice it and massage it and try to mitigate the pain that you're dealing with on a day in, day out basis. So that's really interesting. Dennis Schroeder has absolutely showed up. I think he scored 30 points at least in the last 2 games. Just that 3-guard rotation with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Chris Paul, and then, like I mentioned, Schroeder has been lethal for Oklahoma City all year, and they're finally starting to kick into gear there, and they're starting to put up enough points to keep up with Houston. Because Houston, as I mentioned last week, usually if you shoot around 40% from 3, they're going to win.
Yeah.
They did in this past game that OKC just tied up 2-2 in, and they ended up losing. I don't know. And they were also up double digits at one point in the game, and OKC just clawed back. So that's going to be an interesting series. And if Houston does make it out of it, whether it's in 6 or 7, it almost makes you wonder how much are they going to have left in the tank for a Lakers squad who is finding their stride with LeBron James rolling downhill at you.
And I mean, the Lakers should be just fine moving forward.
I think so.
Portland was just a nuisance, and really the Lakers have been the best team all season. and they should advance. And if they don't, that would be probably one of the upsets of the season.
But I can't wait for them to lose game 1 to Houston, and then we have this conversation all over
have,
again. What's wrong with the Lakers?
Yeah,
Can't wait to have it because that's just how it goes in sports media biz. We're very reactionary, but that's the name of the game.
That is the name of the game, and we do it well.
We do it well. Yeah, so that's kind of the current status of the NBA.
Yeah.
Really looking forward to those semi.
I guess the conference finals.
Yeah,
It's
semi-conference finals, conference semis.
finals.
There we go. Oh my God.
Semifinals conference games.
Anyway,
So,
Lord.
Yeah, that's all right. We'll forgive you this time. So we'll move on to a sport that actually is not happening yet in its entirety, which they should have been on probably their third preseason game by now. NFL power rankings have really been going in full swing. Always fun to discuss because there's always easy targets. ESPN actually had a decent.
We didn't have any gripes with ESPN's current power rankings.
Yeah, the top 10 was pretty on spot. Let's look at NFL networks because this one, who wrote this? Dan Hansis. He's been around the NFL writer for a long time. He is doing this was a week ago. This was post-draft power rankings moving on into this season. First one's the Chiefs. We'll go past that one. That one doesn't matter. Second one's Niners. They took second place. I don't care.
It's fair.
Ravens. Yeah, that's fine. I don't know if there's anything a big issue.
I mean, if you're looking at their 1 through 53 roster, it's one of, if not the most talented in the NFL. You got to think Lamar, at least from a rushing perspective, is going to come back down to earth a little bit. But I also think that they have improvements to make, whether they do or not. We'll see. But in the passing game, and I think that could be, something that propels them to being another 14-2, 13-3 team. We'll see, but I don't have a problem with that.
And they did lose an all-pro safety, which we'll talk about here in just a minute.
Did they, though?
So that will also be, I think, an issue on that back end of the defense because their safeties were probably the weakest part, are now probably the weakest part of that defense. Saints are at 4.
It's another depth of talent, 1 through 53, but there's something about the Saints. I just don't think it's ever going to happen with them as long as Drew Brees and Sean Payton. I honestly think they're cursed. Like, at this point, they can go 12-4 again. They can go 13-3 again. I just don't see it happening.
Yep.
They're, over the last, 4 or 5 years, they're always
above average. But they're never superstars.
Well, since their defense has finally rounded into form, because after Seattle bounced them in the 2010 playoffs, they kind of sputtered out there for a few years, and it's just like the Drew Brees had no defense, but they have had a respectable defense in the past few years.
Still can't do it,
and they just can't make it out of the NFC. And when you're losing to Kirk Cousins at home, I mean, you gotta stop and
be like,
take a look at yourself and what you're doing. But anyway, I still think they will be very good, very competitive. But
probably a decent spot for preseason rankings.
Yeah.
So this is where it gets interesting. 5 and 6 are mind-boggling in the sense that this is way too high. Now, are they probably a playoff teams? Oh, yeah, for sure. Tennessee Titans at number 5, Buffalo Bills at number 6. Both of these teams are led by, first off, Ryan Tannehill, first-round draft pick bust, who was garbage for the Dolphins for
He had
years.
a couple good years if you look at it statistically.
Good or decent? I think it's decent.
Good.
I don't know if they were good.
I think it was 2016. Check me on that. But his stats, he was quality. Anyway.
Nope.
Ryan Tannehill.
Nope. Bad. He's not bad. He had a very good year. Especially on the back end in the playoffs. He went wild. Actually, hold on. No, he didn't. He threw for what? He threw for 120 yards? Or 80? What did he throw for in the playoffs?
They Jimmy G'd him, basically, and they just ran the ball all the time, and understandably so, because it worked for them. But he did throw the ball down the field.
Yeah, and then had incompletions, and had a ton of incompletions because he threw for... Oh, my God. This is bad. I'm going to keep looking because it's.
Boy, I didn't realize we were going to run into all this Ryan Tannehill slander.
No, because I mean, this is exactly why they shouldn't be placed at number 5 because he didn't even have that good of playoffs. They won, I guess. If we're looking at the fact that he led them to wins, that's awesome. But he didn't have anything.
See, that's the thing for him this year. That's why I would not have them at 5. I would have them maybe closer to 10, if even cracking the top 10. But basically, they went on a run last year where the defense was playing great. Obviously, Derrick Henry was running out of his mind. The offensive line was just smashing people. And that's something that you can sustain for a while in the playoffs. Now, if we're turning around to this upcoming season, I'm not exactly sure that that's some place that they're just going to pick up where they left off, let alone be able to play like that for an entire 16 games and then well into the postseason again.
Tannehill threw for 72 yards in the first round of the playoffs. In the wildcard game, he threw for 72 yards with a 50% completion percentage. In the second game, he threw for 88 yards with a 50% completion percentage. And then in the third game, when they lost to the Chiefs, maybe that was the recipe for success, he threw for 209 yards with a 68% completion percentage, and they lost. So I don't believe that a team with a quarterback who is average, well, I'm going to call Ryan Tannehill average. I'll probably place him, if I had to go through the list of quarterbacks in the NFL, I'd put him probably around 15. He reminds me of like a Jared Goff, a guy who is not really all that good, but I think for whatever reason is perceived as this quarterback that can lead a team to the Super Bowl. And I don't know why.
I don't think anybody's out there saying that Ryan Tannehill can lead a team to the Super Bowl. Pump the brakes on that.
Then why do they put him at number 5 in the power rankings?
Well, that's a good question. That's why we're here asking NFL Network, hey, what's up with your rankings? And specifically Mr. Dan.
Yeah, okay.
Anyway,
we realize
beyond the Titans,
Buffalo Bills at 6 also is Josh Allen is definitely has a high ceiling.
He's got a low floor, too.
He has a pretty low floor because of the fact that he's really not that. I mean, he's
not accurate.
He's not accurate at all.
Also, he's careless, which
careless. That playoff game was against the Texans, where he and Deshaun Watson were going back and forth about making ridiculous plays.
He's Josh on Allen, a 15-yard scramble and pitches it to the tight end who's not expecting the ball at all.
Yeah, because he's like, hey, idiot, what in the hell are you doing pitching me the ball?
I do love me some Josh Allen, though.
Well, it's awesome.
If he were the quarterback of my team, I would be stressed out and I would have a lot of gray hair. However, not being a huge diehard Buffalo Bills fan, I love it.
I'm all on board the Josh Allen entertainment train. That's fair. Dallas Cowboys at 7. They have been all NFL media and has been all over the Cowboys shaft for a long, long time.
The thing is, like in the last couple of years, I feel like it's been warranted at least on paper.
For sure.
Because Stephen Jones, I feel like, doesn't get enough credit as acting GM. I mean, he has drafted well. He's brought good veterans in there.
On the cheap, too.
It's weird. You look at their defensive line, and you're looking at like the 2010 like all-decade team. Basically, it's crazy some of the names that they have from the past that were huge names at one point. On paper, they are good, and you got to think that Jason Garrett not being there is an addition by subtraction scenario. We'll see what Mike McCarthy can bring to them from what we understand. He's kind of revised his thoughts and outlooks on the NFL and how offenses should operate. We'll see if that's the case or not, and we'll see if Dak can replicate his success that he had last year. But they got some offensive talent, obviously still one of the better offensive lines in the league. Their defense fell off last year after the year before being one of, kind of their banking points. So we'll see, because they have really good talent on that defense as well. So we'll see if they can kind of round back into form and balance out that team. But I don't hate them at 7, but a couple teams that are behind them is what bugs me.
I also don't hate them at 7. I don't know if I love the Packers at 8 either. I think Aaron Rodgers, though, he has as average of a thrower as he was last year. He just, in terms of comparatively to the rest of his career, he didn't have a great year. Now, I'm not saying he didn't have the weapons, which is true, but I think Aaron Rodgers is definitely past his peak. Now, I think the Packers definitely deserve to be in the top 10 because they still have a solid roster around him outside of the wide receiver position. They have a strong offensive line, strong backfield. Their defensive line is still strong, and their corners are still strong. But I don't know about that. I think it's fine. I don't love it, but I think it's fine.
Okay, so they were the only team with Seattle last year where if you look at their record and then their point differential, they don't exactly add up. So you got to imagine just by the law of averages that they're going to lose some of those games that they were, tightly contested in. They were 13-3 last year. I see them more as like a 10-6, maybe 11-5 at best. Because Rodgers, he's still incredible. If you look at the numbers over the last couple of years, it hasn't looked great in what we're accustomed to seeing. But he's not entirely to blame for that. And I'm not sure that their head coach is exactly trying to get the most out of Rodgers. I think he's kind of looking long-term.
I don't know if their entire organization is trying to get the most out of Rodgers right now.
Which is a whole nother conversation. But, yeah, Packers at 8. they'll be in the mix.
Yeah.
The NFC is always just a revolving door. It's a new team every year out of the NFC. It's not like the AFC where you had
the Patriots
for so
every
long.
year.
It was either going to be a Peyton Manning, Ben Roethlisberger, or Tom Brady led team.
Well, those graphics that you like, they would put like the last 20 quarterbacks to win the AFC, and you would just be Manning, Brady, Ben. Brady, Manning, Brady, Ben, Brady, Manning, and it's like literally it was those three for so long.
And then the NFC, it's like McNabb and Matt Hasselbeck and Russell Wilson.
Yep, and it was literally all
Cam Newton
of random people.
It really was. Jimmy Garoppolo.
Speaking, don't even get me started with Garoppolo. He's a guy who, real quick, that guy is probably on like you said, he's Tannehill. He is Ryan Tannehill. He's a game manager. He is sloppy. He can't deal with the pressure. He's a guy who the Niners would win if he threw for under 100 yards. We'll get to more Garoppolo at a later point because he is garbage. Number 9, and this has really irked me ever since Russell Wilson became a bona fide superstar. You would never, ever see a Brady-led team outside of the top 5 of the NFL power rankings, no matter how bad his roster was. And you have Russell Wilson, who I'd say, based on his stats, his clutch ability, his leadership, you could argue is the best quarterback in the NFL. And the best quarterback in the NFL has a team that is placed at 9 in the power rankings.
I think it goes beyond that for me, too, in terms of my frustration with them not getting the year-in, year-out respect that I think they should, because it's not even just Russell Wilson. It's a Pete Carroll, John Schneider, and the culture of winning, which has been well-established over the past decade in Seattle. The only season that he did not make the playoffs was the year in which everybody on the defense got hurt. Richard tore his Achilles. Earl Thomas ended up breaking his leg that year. He's coming up. And they were just sloppy. They had kicking issues all year. He's only missed the playoff once, and he's taken since that year in 2017. He rebounded in 2018 with a really undermanned, underwhelming roster and made it into the playoffs. Obviously, they didn't go very far.
Yeah.
But still, I don't understand it. And their defense is still suspect, especially on the defensive line. But their secondary, and by everything that you hear coming out of camp, which you got to take with a grain of salt, it's like they have swagger for the first time with getting Jamal Adams back.
Multiple years.
And they have an attitude and they have an identity, at least on the back end. And I think that's something, I'm knock on wood, that will actually give Seattle a little bit more of an identity and a personality going forward.
Well, on paper, this is the best secondary in the NFL.
Right.
And I think one issue is you have Bobby Wagner in the middle, who was always worried about the big play over the top that he had never had to worry about before. And I think that weakened from the front back for the last 2 years. And so I think the Seahawks at number 9 is ridiculous. ESPN actually had them at 5, which I think is fair. Again, I think
at worst should be 7.
At the absolute worst, because they're better than the Cowboys. They're way better than the Bills. They're way better than the Titans. I think there's arguments that they are easily in the top 5 of the NFL. And like I said, ESPN did, so that was nice. So let's move on a little bit here from the power rankings and move on back to that Earl Thomas discussion that I mentioned earlier. We know what happened with that. Earl Thomas was cut after punching his fellow safety, after Earl Thomas allegedly blew a coverage, which isn't the first time that has happened in practice. He had been missing practices, showing up late to practices, which never happened in his time with Seattle. And essentially the team leaders of Baltimore came together and said, sayonara, like, we don't want you here anymore. You're not a beneficial part of this football team. You're more of a distraction. And the Ravens pretty darn quickly, this happened on Thursday, and he was cut on Saturday.
Well, and so too,
maybe Sunday actually.
The Ravens have always been one of the smarter organizations in the league, and that continues to be the case. And so if you look at the financial impact of cutting Earl and taking that hit on the cap that they did, and you weigh that with losing his talent and everything, it's like, obviously the bad is outweighing the good there. And they made what I think is the right decision, just as Seattle did a couple of years ago at Dylan Rollins. Anyway, he cited one of the reasons for him being late to practice was because he had to get his car washed. And I'm like, well, that's
really important.
That's reasonable. I can't fault him there. Do the same thing from time to time, showing up to the locker room late because I got to get that car washed.
You have to get that car washed. It's just, it's really a fall from grace for an Earl Thomas
He's
character.
had one of the worst 2020s.
It's weird. He got caught sleeping with his brother and another lady. And
that was one of the craziest storylines.
And then all of a sudden his wife shows up like, "What are you doing? What are you doing?"
And that feels like that was 2 years ago, and that was just a couple months ago.
But then that whole thing happened months before that, and then TMZ's like, "We got him."
Well, and he was talking ish against or prior to their playoff matchup with the Titans, and talking about how he's not afraid to hit Derrick Henry, and he's gonna like lay him down and everything. And Derrick Henry patted him twice on the back, turned him around, and pushed.
Earl Thomas is like, "Where did Derrick Henry go? Where did he go?" And then one of the funniest memes I saw with that is like, Tennessee Titans are really interested in Earl Thomas to be Derrick Henry's lead blocker.
Yeah.
And
that's essentially
funny.
what he was doing on the play.
It essentially is exactly what he was doing. And so Earl Thomas came into the league, very large chip on his shoulder because he was decently undersized for a safety. Became the starting Seahawks safety pretty darn quick out of the gates. He learned under Lawyer Malloy, who's a bona fide veteran. Had a very obviously strong career with Seattle. Super well liked by by his teammates. Never heard anything from Earl Thomas until probably 3 years ago, maybe 4.
Whenever they played Dallas, it was either 2016 or 2017, and he met up walking back to the locker rooms with Jason Garrett, and he said, "Hey, come get me." But that was the beginning of the end for the LOB.
And for Earl as himself, because from that point on,
he's just been a basket case.
He has been a distraction. He's wanted new contracts. He has flipped off the Seattle sideline, and he said he's like, "Oh, I don't regret flipping off Pete Carroll."
And so many people were upset with the way that Seattle handled that and Pete Carroll handled that, and I don't understand any critique on Seattle's part, especially now that we've seen more examples of Earl just being a head case.
Yeah.
And I haven't heard enough of it in the media, and so I appreciate, as usual, Russillo being like, "Hey, are we ready to say maybe it's his fault?"
Yeah.
Like,
it really should be.
I don't know what else we could be talking about at this point.
Because Earl was like, "I flipped off Pete Carroll because I didn't think he actually cared about my injury." It's like, Pete Carroll is the absolute top-of-the-line players coach.
Right.
Like, everybody wants to be a Seahawk. Everybody would want to be under Pete Carroll because the Seahawks organization, their Seahawks culture, is way more fun than anywhere in the NFL. Cassius Marsh came over from the Patriots after he was at the Seahawks, came back to the Seahawks last year, and then the Seahawks cut him. But he said, being a Patriot sucked. Like, that was terrible. It was boring. It was by the book. He's like, they win, and that's great and all, but I play football to win and to have fun. And that's what, Belichick wants it to be the Patriot way, and if you don't follow under that, you're gone. And I get that.
And it works for them, too, so, you can't really say that much badly against it.
And so that's why it was so shocking. It was like, what do you mean Pete Carroll doesn't care? I mean, like, your career could possibly be threatened here. I mean, broken legs are big deals.
Well, also, and the leverage that he had in that moment at that time, because he sat out camp because of the contract dispute and because of his fear of getting hurt, which is fine, because as a player, that's the leverage, that's the power that you have. And he did not carry that out, and so he took it upon himself to play. So that is on him. It's unfortunate, really, for both parties that he got hurt, but that is something that just happens in football. That's part of the game. Anyway.
I do miss the 2012 Earl Thomas. I miss the 2010 Earl Thomas when he came out with his long dreads and he's running around. But I think one of the more fascinating pieces with what is going on right now is 2 of the 5 top teams that were mentioned for Earl Thomas as a landing spot, the Niners and the Cowboys, both have come out and said no thanks. Like,
the Cowboys surprises me. San Francisco doesn't surprise me, coming out and saying that they don't want anything to do with them. The Cowboys and Jerry Jones declining to entertain
is interesting, because there's been that logical connection for a long time. He's from the Dallas area. He's a Texas Longhorn. I mean, he's Texas through and through, and it's very surprising. I was actually watching CBS Sports, which never happens, earlier today, and they make it a decent point that I think some teams are just trying to be like, well, Earl, we don't want to take your medicine. Like, you need to sit back and realize that this is your fault here, and you need to learn your lesson before any teams are going to be like, hey, Earl, do you want to come play football for me? But I mean, he
made a weird statement on Instagram, I believe it was, afterwards, and I don't remember the specifics, but it was basically saying that he was like the best that he's ever been, and watch out that he's coming, and basically that he was just on his A game, and that watch out for Earl Thomas, and it's like,
Hopefully not. If that happens to Earl Thomas, I will be very sad.
Anyway, we got about 9 minutes left here, so why don't we get to our jabronis?
Let's go to Minshew real quick. So
touch on that real quick.
Minshew real quick because Minshew is the coolest NFL player in the league right now, with his hairstyle, his clothing.
Go
and
Cougs.
he along with the Jacksonville Jaguars, partnered up with Bud Light to create the hashtag Bud Light Minshew Draft. If you draft Gardner Minshew in the first round of your NFL draft, take a screenshot of it, tag that with that hashtag, you will be entered to win 2 free cases of Bud Light. And if you win your fantasy league with Gardner Minshew as your starting quarterback, they will provide you, I think this is what it is, 2 free cases of Bud Light beer every week for the rest of the year, or for a year. That's a great deal.
Hold on. Is it a guarantee or there's a chance?
Yeah,
okay.
You're entered. So, but how many teams are going to win their fantasy league with Gardner Minshew as a starting quarterback? You would I don't know.
So I love this because this is so Minshew, and we're only in year 2, and he's just leaning into all the things off the field that just embellish his persona and who he is and his facade. It's not even a facade. It's just him
I think
through
it's who
and through.
He is. It's been because he hasn't changed in like 8 years since he joined college at a community college. And he's been the same guy.
And there have been some legendary stories about him.
Minshew is the stereotypical legendary kind of hick football player who just pulls
he's Uncle Rico reincarnated.
For sure. Way better at football. But he's a stud. So
anyway, is that really worth drafting him? As much as I love it, I really do. Is it really worth drafting him in the first round for a chance?
Not in your main league.
Yeah.
Now
maybe in your side leagues, the leagues you don't have money invested in.
Yeah, my side league that my main league wouldn't be too happy that I'm seeing. So, and real quick, I do want to mention this other thing real quick. Lionel Messi is also leaving Barcelona most likely. For the first time, he joined the youth academy for Barcelona when he was 13 years old. He has been there for 2 decades. He's now 33. He's tired of what's going on at Barcelona. They haven't replaced some of their all-time stars over the last 5 years who have retired or who have left. He's pissed. He wants to get out of there. The most logical landing spot is, of course, my Manchester City and Pep Guardiola, who they spoke with together. Messi actually called him after Barcelona crashed out of the Champions League and an 8-2 defeat to Bayern Munich. Essentially, he wants a clause, allegedly, this is what has been reported, he wants to play 3 years with Manchester City, and he wants a clause that will allow him to play in MLS after that. He'll be 36 years old when that happens, and it would be with New York City FC. Are you in on Messi being in the MLS at age 36?
Might as well. I mean, the MLS can take all of these guys in the twilights of their career,
but Messi,
coming over from Europe.
Would be the largest name by far.
100%.
It would be Ibrahimovic on crack.
Yeah.
And so I'm really thrilled about that. Let's move on to the Jabronis real quick. Go ahead.
Vinny, what's up?
Come on. What do we got going on?
I don't remember which one's first. One of them I'm not going to comment on any further just because I think the video in and of itself does all the talking. I think that should cue you, Vinny, to which one. Everybody's favorite brother of an NFL superstar, Jackson Mahomes, dancing to Cardi B's very own WAP.
Macaroni in a pot.
Like Mahomes is like the top quarterback in the league, and his brother can't even.
Yeah, play it again, please. Yeah.
From the top, make it drop. That's some wet. That's some clean. I get a bucket and a mop. That's some wet.
I love that you're critiquing the actual physical movement of it.
Macaroni in a pot.
Anybody can do that, and he takes 5 seconds to get up.
I'm not going to critique the movement and the athleticism or lack thereof. I'm going to critique the decision to do that.
Well, that's easier to
put that on video. Well,
come on.
That's all I have to say on that. Here's a sports one. Reggie Jackson being Reggie Jackson. So
shot clock is off. Mavericks chance at the last shot if they want it. Boban and Kawhi just takes it away.
One hand,
the claw
swings down with
rips
it,
that one
and
out of the
they're trying to
hands
get a
of
shot off
Boban.
before the end of the quarter. I'm not even
Clippers
sure why he passes it
the
off to
final
Reggie
bucket.
Reggie Jackson anyway.
George
if I were Kawhi, I would have just
9
taken the
points in
shot
the quarter.
myself.
Doncic 10 points in the.
I don't remember what the quote was, but somebody perfectly lip read Kawhi on that play. And he's like, "Man, I didn't just steal the ball for you to f that up," basically. But Kawhi, you got to bear a little responsibility there. Don't get the ball out to Reggie. Reggie's going to be Reggie. But anyway, I thought that was an awesome play that just turned sour and pitiful so fast. Reggie never changed.
Going up, losing the ball, hitting it to his other hand, hitting it off his other hand as it goes out of bounds.
And then Kawhi John at him as they go to the bench.
Come on. So
what you got?
All right, let's get up this nice image here of a guy who is probably the devil reincarnated. this goes off of the news that Nate McMillan was just fired as Pacers head coach today. Former Seattle Sonics head coach, which brought back a lot of not fully healed wounds, some old scars. This guy right here, this jabroni douchebag, sold the Sonics back in 2008. And we're like, oh yeah, they're not going to move. Like, Clay Bennett's an awesome guy. He's not going to just he's not going to move the Sounders to Oklahoma City. This guy can suck one. He is the biggest jabroni of all time. Not even just this week. He is jabroni number 1 and will be in my.
You got to save that for our all-time list, though. We're going to have a list. I swear.
He will be number 1. He will be number 1, far and away.
Okay.
All right. Closing time for you, sir.
Okay, so kind of got to make this quick, but after the recent development in Wisconsin with the shooting of, I'm forgetting his name and I don't want to butcher it. Jacob Blake, I think that's correct. So obviously with the bubble coming back in the Players Association collaborating with the NBA to make it a focal point of the bubble, that they're going to have social justice littered everywhere, and the media members are going to tee up questions to give players opportunity to speak on these fronts and share some of their thoughts about bringing about change and everything. So that has kicked up again, and so the Raptors and Celtics apparently have been talking about perhaps boycotting Game 1 on Thursday of their series. Have some thoughts on this. I don't know that we're going to have time to get into them, but just a little food for thought whether that would be a productive way about bringing the change that they want to see.
In my mind, as a sports fan, and most people who are watching these athletes are sports fans, in my opinion, it's a tough subject because I understand the message they're trying to make. I understand why they're making it. But I think it's going to piss off the people who just want to watch sports more than anything.
So the people that need to be changed need to hear these messages and need to have the way that they look at the world and race and justice at large. They're not watching the NBA anyway. You're not reaching that demographic. It's just like with all these media members with blue check marks that say, wear a mask. It's like, okay, that's great, and I understand the sentiment. However, the people that follow you are the ones that are wearing the masks. So you're not getting this message across to the people that need to hear it. And I feel similarly about this. Also, it's kind of a middle finger to the NBA, who has done nothing but put the players' interests at the forefront of this bubble. Yeah. They're the most player-friendly and most socially active and progressive league by far, and I don't understand if somebody again can draw out a correlation between boycotting and not playing the game and that bringing about a productive social change. Sure, I'm all ears, and I would love to have that conversation. However, I'm not sure that actually does anything except for alienate your fans, and I understand that might not really be on players' minds because I understand the outrage, I understand the anger, I understand the tiredness of just seeing this all the time. I really do, and I'm empathetic to that. But I wonder if that is something. And not playing, again, it gives you an opportunity in these press conferences after the games to talk about these things and to keep the conversation going. So if you don't play the games, are you really optimizing this avenue that the NBA has given you? I don't know. Those are my quick thoughts on it.
It seems it's more of a distraction, and I know Commissioner Silver's sitting there like, damn it! Like we literally have done everything.
Like we'll hear you out, we'll talk to you because that's what they have done nonstop. The NBA has been cooperative with it.
Exactly, like you said,
beyond cooperative
more than anyone else, and it's really hard because then now the sponsors aren't going to be happy, fans aren't going to be happy, and you're just creating this bubble in the bubble of unhappiness at people looking at this. And again, like you said, if I can see a correlation, if I can hear media members asking the players, like, how do you really think that this will impact change? I would love to hear it because
I just don't know. And my quick thoughts.
Yeah.
And if they are able to point something out, I will admit that, okay, I was wrong, and that does seem like a logical solution.
If we hear it, if this actually happens and they get asked about it and we hear about it, we'll talk about it next week.
Right.
Because it does matter and it is important. But it just doesn't make any sense on the surface, and I don't think the players have done a good enough job at this point at explaining why it actually does matter.
I agree.
In their eyes. So we'll pop in my video here real quick to end the show. My closing time is a stud by the name of Raul Ruiz Diaz. out of Peru. And we get a nice cross in here. And that angle there on the corner of the 6-yard box is tighter than you would have to imagine actually it's about a 45-degree angle is exactly what it's at, but it's behind him. So it's a 45-degree angle behind him. He has to redirect this ball, and we'll see a better replay here coming up. This was at a very pivotal moment of the game here in the 73rd minute is when this goal was scored. Sounders had been kind of on the front foot. Excuse me, they've had most of the possession, but this is the rivals. Speaking of jabronis, Portland Timber fans are jabronis. We're going to get a nice, here comes the cross, and watch just this angle. It's off Steve Clark's back, who also is a jabroni. I hate Portland. Portland sucks. I don't like the city. I don't like.
You heard it here first.
I don't like the teams, except the Blazers are okay because that's all I have. But
when it's convenient for you, you like
me,
Portland.
Oh yeah, for sure. I'm going to move the goalposts all I want. This is my show. This is my sports life.
Yeah, you're not just a guest. You're actually a host.
I'm not just a guest like I am on the Spokesman podcast, which is not.
Didn't have to mention it.
But
it's fine.
That was very important because after that goal, Sounders then scored 2 more goals, one of them being an assist by Rui Diaz, another one being a goal by Rui Diaz, and Sounders go on to win 3-0 against their heated rivals, the Portland Timbers. And the Sounders now have a game tonight against the LA Galaxy, and looking forward to that. But my closing time is Raul Rui Diaz being an absolute stud. That's
he's got to be because their sponsor on the front of their jerseys is just
awful.
Worst.
Xbox was sweet. Xbox right now is Zulily.
And will
have you ever? Have you heard of Zulily before then?
No,
not at all. I don't even know what they do. I know it's like some online marketplace. I think a lot of women shop on it. Maybe men do. I'm not sure.
I couldn't tell you, but that is negligent speculation, and we will end the show on that. How about that?
Yeah, well, that'll be a great way to end it. So, thanks for stopping by. This is The Locker Room. We'll be back here next week, probably on our normal day of Thursday, to have more discussion on sports and everything that is happening in the world of sports.
Take it easy. Thanks for watching The Locker Room on Spokane Talks. Check us out on Facebook as well as our other platforms. We want to hear from you. Join the conversation by emailing us at info@SpokaneTalksOnline.com. And for more sports news, opinions, and content, follow Justin and me on Twitter.